Welcome to Blender Frenzy. I am Justin, and today we are going to make a cool transition effect that looks something like this. Or we can rotate it like that, or we can rotate it a little bit diagonal and make it go up and down diagonally. But yeah, so this is what that looks like in the 3D view. And let's see what kind of effect you can do with this in the video sequence editor. It looks like something like this. I'm just going to mute these here. So it looks something like this. So your video, and then we have a the end card there. So basically we just add in our fire and our mask here together, overlaid on top of each other, making this look like this. And it fades our video out, or burns our video up to our end credits here. And by the way, this is a project that I'm working on, the portal project that I made. And if you want access to this tutorial series on how to make a portal effect like this, you can go to my website, blenderfrenzy.com, and look at the memberships. I've got Frenzy freebies, Plus and Pro levels that you can sign up for, and you get a whole bunch of extra stuff, extra tutorials, project files downloads, live stream events with Q&A, and a whole bunch more. So again, blenderfrenzy.com, but this tutorial is specifically going over this transition effect. So let's see what the node setup is here. So I'm just going to show you a bird's eye view here. In case you want to take a screenshot, you can take a screenshot of this and then kind of see the workflow before we get started. Now, this is a concrete wall texture that we have here. I just got that off of Pixabay. You can put any texture that you want in here. But enough rambling, let's get started. So open up a new instance of Blender, get rid of that default cube, add in a mesh plane, and go into top mode. And I'm not going to go button by button. You can see my screencast keys down here. So I'm assuming you have some working knowledge of Blender in order to follow along here. So let's scroll in, and I'm going to pull this up a little bit here, and then just going to pull out another area and change this to our shader editor. And then of course we're going to go into material preview mode first and add in a new material. I'm going to title this Fire Burn, and then we're going to get rid of this principled BSDF. And I like to start with a input texture coordinate node, and not many people do, but I like to do this so that you can see what is happening with the texture and the movement. So you see all these inputs, and if I hold Control Shift and click, I can click through these. Now this is going to work only if you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled. In the preferences, go to add-ons and search for Node Wrangler and just enable that. But each of these have different colors that represent the different coordinates of the two-dimensional texture in 3D space. So we're going to use object, and the object by default, if there's nothing selected in this object box here, it will use the object that the material is applied to already, so which is our plane. So if I move the plane, you can see it, the texture coordinates are moving with the plane, and it moves according to the origin point, this center point here, that little dot you see. And you have these different colors representing, again, the different coordinates. But for example, if I scroll in here and change this to camera, if I move the plane now, the texture coordinates actually stay put. And that's because they are using the reference of the perspective that we're looking at, of the user camera, the top view mode, to stay there, and my view isn't moving. And if I shift and middle click and I pan the grid around, you can see that's still staying in the same spot there. And that's because it's from our perspective, it's staying in the center. So let's go to View, Align View, and Center View to Cursor. What's cool about this is we can actually add in an empty sphere or any other object, and we're going to use this object as the control for our movement of our texture. So let's select the plane again, and I actually want to be able to select our empty without losing the information down here. So select our plane, click this pin button here, so that now that if I select my empty, it doesn't matter, I can still see all my nodes set up here. Okay, so in here, let's select this object as our empty. And now if we grab this, it doesn't do anything because we're in camera still, so we've got to go back to object. And now grab this, and you can see we're moving the texture coordinates using this empty. Pretty cool. Okay, so let's add in a noise texture now. So I'm just going to do a search for noise texture. And this is what a noise texture is. You're probably very familiar with this if you're watching this video. Noise textures in 2D and 3D art are very, very common. But we can change the scale here. It's just making these clouds more small or bigger. Or we can change the detail to make it sharper or more blurry. Same thing with the roughness and with distortion. Can play with all of those. We can come back to these later if we want, but I'm going to put something like this for now. And then we want to actually add these two together. So let's add in a vector math. And this workflow actually is thanks to CG Matter / Default Cube, two different channels, same guy. I'm sure you've heard of him, but this is his method, and it's wonderful. It works with several different things, including the portal project that I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to plug this object into the top and the noise texture into the bottom, where we're just adding those together. And now you can see when we grab this, it's still moving according to the empty, but we've got the noise texture and the texture coordinates affecting each other. But we have a bit of a problem. We don't have the right colors. So here are object colors, which should be added to that noise texture. The center point should be in the origin, but it's not. It's shifted down. And this is because according to CG Matter, and I don't know if this has to do with vectors, but it definitely has to do with math. So you have 0 to 1, a value from 0 to 1. You have an infinite number of points in between 0 and 1. And so if you have an infinite number of points between 0 and 1, 0 being fully off and 1 being fully on, those infinite number of points all average out to 0.5. So everything is shifting on every axis of this texture coordinate is shifting 0.5. So you see that it's 0.5 down here, it's 0.5 over here, 0.5 down here, 0.5 on the Z and on the X, because we can actually take this and rotate it as well, like this. We can also rotate it on the Y or on the X, and when we rotate it on those, it changes those colors. So that's why we have different colors. So to compensate for this, we can just duplicate this, and instead of add, we're going to choose subtract, and then we're going to subtract that 0.5. And now we have the same correct colors as our object here, you can see, but with the added noise onto that. And its origin is directly in the center, which is what we want, and we still have the empty affecting all of this. Awesome. Now let's make our fire. So let's take these, and we're going to add in a separate XYZ, plug that in here, and then we can take just one coordinate. So it's just one, the XYZ. All of these object coordinates are all X, Y, and Z together, which is what gave us the different colors. But now we're just separating it. So we're just using the X. Now we could also use the Y, which is up and down, and then the Z, which is just to and from the camera. So if I move this, you're not going to see anything happening because everything is just moving to and from the camera with no perspective. So I'm just going to keep this on X, and in order to rotate it, we just rotate our empty. So that's easy as that. Now you can see what's going on with our mask and everything. So we have our empty affecting this, and you can start to see what's happening here and how that fire is going to play out as a mask transition in our video sequence editor. But we don't have a pure white here now, I don't think. Go to render properties and scroll all the way down to color management, and then change filmic to standard. Yep, and now this is going to be the pure standard white that we want for masking in the video sequence editor and for videos and stuff. So just like that. So with a mask, white is fully visible and black is fully invisible, or fully opaque, fully transparent, depending on what terminology you want to use. Just snap that back to the middle there. Okay, so that's going to be good for our mask for any video or image that we have, but we want a line of fire that we can overlay on top of that. It looks like it's like being burned away. So to do that, we can add in a math node here, just a regular math, and then change add to compare. And this compares something. But again, so we've already compensated for the 0.5 over here, so we can take this value down to 0, and then that will be right in the center. And I don't exactly know all the calculations. I'm really not a math guy. This is, again, from other people, other tutorials. CG Matter does a good explanation of the different math stuff involved. But if we take this bottom value, we can make this thicker or thinner for our line. So we can have this as affecting that along with these. So we can change our fire line to be more detailed or less detailed. I'm just going to crank that detail all the way up here, so we've got that those nice edges there for the fire that is burned. And then the scale here is it's okay, but there's not enough like turbulence. Now we can make the roughness up here, but that's not the look we're going for, and neither is that. So you can get some cool effects, but that's not really the fire type stuff we're looking for. So I'm going to keep this about 0.7. And of course, distortion, this is really not the look we're going for. I don't know, maybe a little bit of distortion, something like that, actually might be, that might look pretty cool. We might change it a little bit later, but what we want is we want to have the line a little bit more wavy. So to do that, we can add in a scale here, and that's another vector math. So just duplicate one of these and then change this to scale and plug that in right here. And now we can take the scale and scale it up to make it more turbulent, I guess. But you can see it displaces it, and that's because of our offset. So we have to, whatever we scale here, we have to change the offset here. So if I can click and drag down to all three of these and then move left and right to scale all of them. So right there, that's going to be our offset here, but that's way too tedious. So when we're trying to tweak things, we'd have to come over here, scale this, and then see if we like that, and then come back over here, move it here. So we don't want to do that. We want Blender to do it automatically. And there's an easy way to do this, again, thanks to CG Matter. Just trying to give credit where credit is due. We're going to duplicate the scale and plug this in here. And then make these our 0.5 here for the subtract compensation. And then for the scale, we can either scale both of these up the same, or just add in an extra node called value. And we're just going to plug one value into both of these at the same time. And that way, at a 0 value, you can see it's completely straight, no turbulence at all. And then we drag this up and we get more and more and more turbulent there. So that is really cool that way. And then we can also adjust this with our scale and all of that good stuff. We can also come back over here and adjust the thickness to all of that here, like that. And we can have something that looks like this. Now, I'm not entirely convinced yet of that distortion, so I'm just going to crank that distortion. Oh, I don't want to crank it. I'll just put it to 0. Yeah, so this looks a little bit more like the fire I'm trying to go for. I don't know, maybe bump that up to 2. Yeah, that's not too bad. We'll keep that at 0.2. Okay, so let's give this some color now. Let's just add in an emission shader along with a mix shader. And plug the emission into the bottom. And if we plug this in, and then the factor of mix shaders always affect the bottom input here. So at a factor of 1, then it's fully this emission color right here. So if we change that to an orange-ish here, down here, then you can see it's fully orange. And then we change that factor all the way down to 0, it's fully black, or transparent if you're using transparency. So we want to tell Blender to use this orange color only where this is, which this is basically our mask for the orange. So everywhere there's white, it's going to be orange, and everywhere there's black, there's going to be black or transparency. So we're going to use this as the factor, put that in here, and plug that in. And now we have our orange color affecting the fire that's going across the screen. And if we crank up the strength, you can see we get more yellow. But what we want to do is we want to make this kind of glow. To do that, we need to be in Eevee. And by the way, all of this is going to be in Eevee, not cycles. I don't know if I mentioned that. So make sure you're in Eevee. Let's go to our bloom, and we can just check that on. And then when we bring the strength up, you can see it's now blooming. But no matter how far we go, it just seems to cap out at that yellow. So it's just being yellow. This is not really that realistic, because when you get something super, super bright, it's completely white in the center. This is really easy to do. We just have to back off the saturation. You can't have that white if something is fully saturated. That's what this HSV, hue saturation value, this saturation here, we're just going to back that off a little bit. And now you can see that hot white glow in there. And that's cool. I'm going to back the strength off a little bit. This is way too strong at the moment. Yeah, just mess with that. We can also mess with the hue to change the, whether it's redder or more of an orange red. I like that. That's pretty cool right there. Maybe that's a little bit too. Let's do. We could also add in a color ramp here if you want. This is just optional. I'm going to take this, hover my mouse over here, press Control-C to copy that color, and then click this white one, and then down here, I'm going to Control-V to paste that color. And just pull this in here, and then wait for that to load, and then what we can do is just slide this and have that affect the glow here a little bit more easily. Something like that. We can also change the color here. Oh yeah, there we go. See, I like that. That's a lot better. That looks a lot more like actual fire. Okay, maybe take the strength down a smidge. I like 20. 20 is good for now. Okay, but we want to make this transparent, which is pretty easy to do at this point. Just add in a shader transparent BSDF, plug that right in here. And then wherever the black is, there should be transparency, but we don't have that because in Eevee, what we need to do first is we can either select our plane, come down to the material tab, and then scroll all the way down to settings and our blend mode here. You can also access that by hovering your mouse over the shader editor here and press N. And then here's all your tabs. It's kind of hard to see. If you want to go to your options, this is your options tab. And it's the same thing here. So I'm just going to change the blend mode to alpha blend. And ta-da! Now we have that transparency. And if we turn off our overlays, select our empty, and grab that, we can move that over. And that is beautiful, beautiful fire right there going across our screen. And again, we can always play with these, the thickness of it here. We can come in here, play with the scale here. We can also play with the scale here to make it more or less rough. And I like, maybe like that, 2.8, 2.9, or just do 3 for ease. Detail, we can also bring that detail down. What happens there? Oh, then we get some like cool effects like that, which is, that's not a bad effect. It's just not the effect we're going for at the moment. So I'm going to keep that all the way up at 15. Yeah, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Let's see, distortion. Yeah, it's a little bit too stylized. Let's do just 0 distortion there. Or maybe that 0.2 again. Yeah, I like the 0.2. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to overlay this piece on top of the original mask that we had here. Almost, except for, see, the original mask has a mixture of white, black, and gray, so different shades of gray in between, affecting that transparency. We don't want that. We actually just want a hard line of white and black. So in order to do that, what we can do is duplicate this up here and change the compare to greater than, and plug the X in here. And then if we look and see what that is, this is what that looks like. So it's a very hard-edged black and white mask that's going to keep everything here fully opaque or fully visible, and everything here fully transparent. So if we use this as the factor, actually what we want to do is make this an emission. So add in an emission shader and plug that in here. Make sure the strength is 1, and we plug that in, so that's good. Then we take another mix shader, and then we're going to add this as an overlay on top of this. And to do that, we need to plug this in the bottom, and we need to use the factor. So right now, if we plug this into the top and plug that in, remember the factor affects the bottom input here. So if I have a factor of 0, that means our fire is going to be 0. It's not going to be shown at all. If I change this, if I move this slider up, we can start to see our fire. And if we go all the way to 1, then it's only this that we see, and then we don't see any of this. So we're almost there. We just need a factor of telling where the boundaries of the fire are, so that the fire only shows in that area, and then everything else we can see beneath it. So we already have that. So that's our compare. So we're going to use this as the mask for the fire. So we're going to plug this right into the factor, and then that should do it. So now we have the fire overlaying on our white background, which is a little hard to see, but it is working. So everything here we have fully white, and then we have our fire that's burning over top of the mask being pulled over to the side, and then we have our fully transparent here. Of course, we don't have this as fully transparent because the emission shader here, if we plug this in, we don't have, snap that to the middle, we don't have any transparency information here. So we have to add that. Let's just duplicate this. So the emission shader here, I'm going to duplicate our transparency here, and we are just using transparency here. So the greater than, we're going to use that as the factor here, and then that should be all white here, and then this should be transparent. Yes, so that looks good. So just like that. And now we're going to use the output of this, input that here instead, and plug both of those in. I hope you're following along. Combining that, now we have something that is fully opaque or visible, and then we burn it away and fully transparent. So we can, instead of using a white color here, and actually I don't even need to have this plugged in, we can unplug that, and then we can change this color to whatever color we want. So now we have a nice blue that's being burned away into nothing. So we can plug any texture in here. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to drag in that one that I had in the preview, the concrete texture that I got from Pixabay. Plug that one in here. And now we have that concrete wall being just burned away. Okay, and so then now we can just take this, and if sound effects are mine, by the way, that doesn't come with the nodes. There's no node I can plug in to make this sound effect there. So what we need to do now is make an animation. So this is going to be a simple animation. You can do it diagonally, or you can do it up and down, however you want to do it. I'm just going to do it from left to right. So we're going to start over here, of course. And so I don't have to keep messing with the position of this. I'm going to open up our panel here and our item tab, and then I'm going to lock the Y and the Z so that when I grab this, I can only move it on the X-axis. It's just going to make it easier for navigation. So grab that, move that over to about here, right where I can't see any of that anymore. And then we're going to add in a keyframe. Just press I, location. I get a location keyframe, and I'm going to bring that. We actually need to go to the beginning, and then I'll just snap that selection to current frame. And then I'm going to go, let's see, I think it was 40. I'll do 40. No, 50, 60. I don't know. We'll try 50 first. And then this is going to be over here to where we don't see the fire anymore. And then I, location, and we can go to the beginning and press play. All right, that's not too bad. Maybe I will just bring it to 60 to slow that down just a little bit. Yeah, I like that speed. Now we need to render, but let's save it first here. I've been getting in a bad habit when I'm doing these recordings not to save. Okay, so let's go to our rendering tab. I'm going to pull this up a little bit here, and I'm going to pull out another area, go to the 3D viewport, go into our camera mode. Oh, yeah, so we actually need to position our camera again. I'm going to go back to the layout. Let's do that over here. And camera, select our camera, Alt-G, Alt, oh, that's Control-G. Alt-G, Alt-R, and then grab on the Z and pull that up. And now we can go into our camera mode, and let's see what I'm going to do. What do I want to do? Let's do our timeline here. I'm going to keep my camera here like this. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is go into my camera and go to perspective and change that to orthographic. And then we can use the orthographic scale to scale this in. Now I could go all the way over here, but then that cuts off a lot of that fire. So I'm just going to hold shift, and we're going to line this up to about the top and the bottom here. Okay, so then I've got a lot of fire that we still have, we can see. But now we need to resize our plane. But if I just go ahead and resize it, it's going to resize that. It's going to resize our fire too, which may be what you want. Actually, that's kind of cool. It's another way to get more jagged edges there, I suppose. But I don't want to do that in this instance. We're just going to use this. And in order to scale without scaling our texture, we can tab into edit mode, make sure we have everything selected by pressing A, and then come over to our options and then select correct face attributes. And then if I scale, press S and then X to scale on the X, you can see it's not stretching our texture at all. And you got to remember to uncheck that because you might not want that on all the time. So tab out of that, and oh, it did look like that still. What? Okay, I think I know what's happening here. So it's not actually distorting the texture. So if I scale that, you can see. But if I scale this on the X and pull it out, it's scaling the fire, and it's because of an unknown reason. I don't know why, because it should be using these as the texture coordinates. But that's kind of cool. I mean, that does look a little bit more like fire burning, but that's a little bit too much. So let's go ahead and back this out here. Scale on the X here. And uncheck that again. Okay. So you might like that. And yeah, looks like a lot more turbulent fire. But what we can do is take this, if you want to change that, scale that on the X, and you can see that also affects this here. So we can kind of compensate for that. So I'll bring down something like that, and that looks good, actually. Yeah, I like that. We could also do the same thing on the Y. Not really. We scale this up a little bit more. Yeah, that's really like turbulent fire, which is pretty cool. I like that. Okay, so let's keep it like this, and let's see what we have now. Of course, we're gonna have to change our start and end points here. So let's go back to the first one. We're gonna just grab this and move this to where we don't see any fire started yet. I, location, and then we go to the end frame. Grab and move that over to where we don't see any fire. I, location. And there we go. Okay, now we're ready to render out here. So save. This video is a part of a series, and if you want to check out the whole series, head on over to my new website, blenderfrenzy.com, where you can access lots of free and members-only content, including extra tutorials, downloads, assets, blend files, Q&A live streams, and much more. Signing up helps support me, which in turn gives you more Blender content, so head on over to blenderfrenzy.com and become a member today.